Hello and welcome. It's February 28th, typically the last day of the month, but this year we have a free day, leap year. So look forward to that. Hopefully you get something productive done with your extra day. I'll probably just take a nap or something. Wrapping up the end of the year, the first thing we want to talk about today is we still have one day left of commodity trading, but most of February is wrapped up. That means the corn and soybean crop insurance prices are almost set. I did a quick calculation before we jumped on, excluding today, so this isn't the final number, but $9.18 for soybeans, $3.89 for corn. That's, of course, lower than we were last year, and in fact, the lowest crop insurance price that we will have set since 2016. So, Brent, thinking about acreage, what's on your mind? What's on your mind with these crop insurance prices, and how are you thinking about that?
So just looking at the crop insurance prices, the corn one being at 389 is obviously not super attractive, and neither are beans at 918. But I think relative to one another, to me, it's more favorable to beans than I thought it would be maybe 6 months ago. So I think the signal is getting sent to not go too crazy on corn. That will, of course, remain to be seen. But these prices are clearly not the kind of levels I think most people are hoping for.
And let's just talk for a minute about what commodity prices have done the last 2 weeks. Corn's lost, I think, 15 cents over the last 2 weeks. Soybeans, we have a Forecast Network question about the November soybean contract falling below $9 a bushel. Earlier today, it was $9.25, $9.25, so a quarter of a cent away from that $9 mark. That's about as close as you can get without tripping that. So I had to update my forecast. Brent had to update his quite a bit as we were preparing for this. So soybean, the unfortunate part of the story is this commodity markets have slid over the last 2 weeks, and so that's set up for lower prices today than what this average for the month reflects.
Yeah, I mean, you start, 15-cent slide on 200 bushel corn. That's $30 an acre revenue potential that's been erased off the corn market just in the last couple of weeks. And given, the overall situation and tenor in the markets, one's got to wonder how much more downside there is. There's just a really negative attitude right now. And so I think, we're just watching profit potential evaporate in the grain markets, I think, right now. And it did surprise me. It caught me off guard that soybeans had gotten down to that $9 level. And because I'd kind of been thinking that soybeans would kind of outperform corn. I mean, we're at a 2.36 on the crop insurance price ratio. So, I think it's kind of caught me a little bit by surprise.
And, corn's also, for some context, what you were just saying, corn had been around that 390 level on the December contract. Now it's around 375. So there's a lot of hope that we could have seen a $4, maybe a rally towards 425. And that has also got some space now behind us on the rear view mirror. So we have a simple model that we think about acreage. Acreage will be the conversation for March, end of March especially. If you take that price ratio, 2.36, and we're assuming 180 million acres of combined corn and soybeans get planted, that comes out at 84.6 million acres of soybeans and 94.5 million acres of corn. So very similar with the USDA had a couple weeks ago, but starting to get this tone set for the 2020 production year.
Yeah, and I think given that price ratio, that's probably a pretty good guess as to where things are going to shake out. It's just going to depend, I think, next couple months. It's going to be real interesting to watch and see what happens. But I got to think that the acreage intentions will be somewhere in that neighborhood.
So, Brent, we talked a little bit beforehand. The price slide the last 2 weeks, or the last week especially, the stock market's also down. I think the Dow Jones is off about 11% for this week. Coronavirus is on everyone's mind. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of volatility. How are you thinking about this?
Well, this is exactly the case. Uncertainty is at maybe a maximum right now. Um, so there's just so much uncertainty as to how big an impact that's going to have outside of China. I mean, I think the China situation, we kind of know it really slowed things down over there and has caused a huge mess. And so right now the uncertainty is just how bad is it going to get in the rest of the world, and you're just seeing everybody really want out of things right now. And so trying to be rational about it and look at the statistics and the data and try and make a reasonable decision. But it seems to me that it could have a pretty substantial impact in the United States on economic activity if it were to continue to spread, which indications suggest it might.
I like how you talk about or I agree with how you said maximum uncertainty, because there are really smart people in really powerful positions who are making this sort of similar claim, but then when you dig into the details, it's quite a bit different. So they're saying, oh, the numbers aren't what they seem. And you're like, okay, well, what? And one group will say it's not as bad as everyone's saying, and another group is saying it's way worse than what everyone's saying. So you take the China numbers, you take the numbers that some of the stuff that the USDA, or excuse me, USCDC is saying. There are groups of people out there that are saying, yes, but it's worse, or yes, but it's not as bad as that. And that's what I think maximum uncertainty is. Whenever people look at the situation and they can diverge into wildly different outcomes, as that's maximum uncertainty. And one of the things that is coming up now is supply chain shortages. So a lot of things, economic activity and productivity in China was slowed down, and now how is China going to start to ship parts when their factories are still shuttered or temporarily shuttered? How does that trickle through? Thinking about ag exports, if there's no one over there to unload the barges, or the ships as they come in with soybeans, that's going to be a problem. I think that's the risks that we face as the disease spreads throughout the rest of the world.
Well, and the other thing I think that's a little bit, the thing I keep coming back to is it seems like everybody is starting to try and follow the same playbook as China, which is shut everything down. Japan announcing they're going to, Prime Minister asking schools to voluntarily close for at least 2 weeks, maybe up to a month. It just seems like everybody is things down for spread. And as we do that, it seems to me that that really has a big impact on economic activity, especially in the short run. In the long run, we really should bounce back from this as long as things kind of runs its course.
So thinking about that short run versus long run, I agree long run is not as much of a concern, but the short run, Goldman Sachs came out with some projections this week saying, and we'll put a link to that, like, hey, sales figures, growth in sales for these companies is probably going to be flat, thinking of the stock market for 2020. So we started thinking about that, like, okay, if you're looking for a 3, 4, 5, 6, 8% increase in sales, if now there's some sort of shutdown in your supply chain, or there's a temporary voluntary suspension of a school, or thinking about all the different implications, that could really change your financial projections, especially if you're planning on a little bit of growth. If you could be set back to no growth or maybe a little bit of contraction. I think that's what's on everyone's mind as they think about the stock market.
Yeah, and economics is the study of human behavior, and we usually think of people responding to prices. And so this is a little different, and where people, it doesn't really matter what the price is, they're just going to stay home. And you just start to see lots of follow-on impacts of that all throughout the economy. And I think that's the contagion, the economic contagion that has people really concerned, and I think rightfully so.
So shifting gears a bit, there's a new article I want to let subscribers know about on the Forecast Network. It's under Digging Deeper. It's actually an update on the USMCA topic we've been talking about a lot. So USMCA was ratified by Congress. The president signed off on that. That question has been resolved, but the issue of USMCA still has some issues lingering. Specifically, Canada hasn't resolved the trade or hasn't ratified the trade agreement that we're waiting for that to happen this spring. After that, the three nations have to update the rules, specifically if there's a car tariff in place, and part of the agreement was to change that. Each country has to put the rules in place to make that happen. And then all the countries have to mail a letter to the other one saying like, hey, we've updated all of our rules, we're ready to start the trade agreement. And then after 60 days after those letters are all sent, then the USMCA goes into effect. And so the point of this article, which is well laid out, is expect to see a lot of USMCA updates. And so we've ratified it, but we're a long ways away from the trade agreement actually being in effect and the full force of that being realized to consumers and producers.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also encourage people to take a look at that interview with Joe Glauber. We mentioned that last week. I think we're putting some pretty interesting stuff in the platform for people to look at, and I strongly encourage you to read some of that. And I know you just wrote a new article on manipulation on social media. It's pretty interesting too.
Yeah, so I found a 4-part YouTube series. You can decide how manipulating the YouTube videos are themselves, but I found to be very illuminating. It talks about, why news and news feeds are leaving some of the fact checking to us, the users. It also talks about the underlying economics, underlying business activity as to why bots occur on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube videos, how fake videos get created, why they get created. And so it was interesting. There wasn't a whole lot of new revelating ideas or new revelations in terms of ideas, but it was, I hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about it. And one of the things that stood out to me was a few years ago, back in 2016 especially, the regular hacking activity was bots posting a message and then using advertising money to promote that message. And there's a lot of congressional messages about that. And one of the things each of these videos points out is anytime the social media sites or maybe even the government tries to regulate that behavior, a more complex behavior emerges. And so now the more complex behavior, the evolved behavior, is bots are posting messages and then going out and hiring other bots to like and comment and promote the original message, which then pushes its popularity up towards becoming viral. And eventually it hits this threshold where humans actually start engaging with it. And so then it becomes viral on its own right. And so it's just interesting to step back and think about how all this plays together. A couple quick facts. Twitter is apparently verifying close to 10 million accounts a day, and about 3/4 of those are automatically suspended or removed. Facebook removes 1 million. You have to go read I provided a summary. I might be getting these a little backwards, but also Facebook removes 1 million accounts per day for this behavior. So the scale is just mind-blowing. I think 35,000 employees, either Twitter or Facebook, are working on this fake activity, and it sounds like a giant number of employees, and it's a lot of expense, but the sheer number of fake activity that's going on is a huge issue for them.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, that's all we have on my side of the list. We updated a lot of forecasts as we were talking about preparing for this. So we encourage you to go check out yours. The soybean forecast will be an important one to update. Doesn't look like the market's going to cross there today, but we got really close. And if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll, of course, provide a link to that in the transcript, but our contact information is also on the site. And we're going to start working on some new questions to be putting in the platform here in the next coming weeks. So that's all I have. Brent, anything else from your end?
No, I think that'll probably do it. Have a good week.
All right. Thanks, everyone.